programs that are coming up. They're on various sheets of paper out there. We'll be having Governor Quinn over in about 2 weeks from today, Monday the 14th. That is going to sell out, so if you're at all able to join us on the 14th, that'll be great. If you're interested to hear what our controller, Dan Hines, has to say, he will be joining us here on the 6th of January. A lot of other very exciting programs are coming up, and of course you can always visit our website, cityclub-chicago.com. Can I just get a quick indication, how many of us here today are in fact members of the City Club? Excellent. Give yourselves a round of applause. And please encourage your table mates to join us in that status. Now is a great time, especially with 2010 in the offing. Also on your tables, we have these forms. They might be under a plate of tilapia or pasta, but you want to find these forms. Don't send up the pasta, send up the form, and be sure you put a question on it. We'll be getting to questions with Ellen in just a few short minutes. So if you have questions, fill out the form, give us a little signal. We've got people who will pick them up. They'll come up here and join us. And now, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for the person who makes City Club what it is, our president, Jay Doherty.
Thank you, Chris. One minor correction. The Quinn event sold out in 4 minutes, and there's 914 on the waiting list. But other than that, Chris is perfect. Thank you. I get so much of the credit, but it really is our chairman, Tom Roser, by the way, who's with us today. Tom served as, let's give him a round of applause. Tom served as president for 17 years, and now for the last 15 has served as our chairman. Let's give Tom Roser a round of applause. Thank you. As I mentioned, it really is our board members who really should get the lion's share of the credit. We have with us today Joyce Saxon. Give her a round of applause. Anne-Marie St. Germain, Anne-Marie, Grant Linsky, Chris Long, Martha Jantho, Chris Roebling. Let's give them all a round of applause. Thank you. Last year, or this year in 2009, we helped out 4 different organizations. In January, City Club board member David Axelrod spoke up at Misericordia. We're proud to announce on January 25th, 2010, David Axelrod will be speaking at Misericordia. So if you're interested in getting tickets for that, let me know. Then in July of this year, City Club member Mayor Daley asked us to give a hand to the State of the City luncheon. We did so. It was the largest in the history of the event. In September, we were asked by Governor Quinn and Mayor Daley to help out on the Special Olympics in honoring Ann Burke and Eunice Kennedy Shriver. We did so. And in November, and then last week, the Haymarket Center, our chairman Tom Roser and board member Anthony Cole asked us to help out the Haymarket Center, and we did so. So let's give yourselves a round of applause because you were so helpful, and we're very grateful. Thank you. We have with us today someone who came up with a great idea. And the great idea was to elect someone from Illinois president. And she gave this idea to David Axelrod, and he's president today, Betty Lou Saltzman. Betty Lou, stand up. Don't be modest, just stand up. There we go. Thank you very much. And sitting next to her, Chief of Staff, second to none, even though David Messina is here, Julia Stash from the MacArthur Foundation. There we go. Thank you. He's the head of the Museum of Science and Industry, great friend of the City Club, David Messina. David, where are you? David, there we go. Okay. He served as corporation counsel to Mayor Daley. Now he's over at Northern Trust. He's a great friend of the City Club and the spouse of the guest speaker today, Kelly Welch. Kelly, thank you for being with us. We are his smallest client, but we are his most grateful. He's our accountant, Shelley Holtzman. Shelley, where are you? Oh, Shelley, stand up. There we go. Chicago Public School Board Member, Roxanne Ward. Roxanne, thank you for being with us. the provost at Loyola University, Christine Weissman. Christine, thank you for being with us today. Let's see. Oh, this person is one of my favorite people in life. And he's a great City Club board member. And if you study his heritage of public service and his family's heritage, it really is without parallel in my mind. Charles Benton. Charles, thank you very much for being with us today. Our guest today is the president of the Joyce Foundation. Grant, did I forget you? Oh, I forgot Ed Mazer. I'm sorry. And I forgot Miles Berman. I'm sorry. Ed Mazer, Art Berman. I'm sorry. Give him a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you all. Our guest today is president of the Joyce Foundation, and she will tell you about all the money they have and how they give it away. But they have two invaluable assets. One is a former board member who is president of the United States of America, Barack Obama, and another one is a special assistant to the president of the United States of America, Valerie Jarrett. The mission of the Joyce Foundation is to improve the quality of life in the Great Lakes region. Our guest today holds an honors degree in English from Brown University and a master's of management in finance and marketing from Kellogg. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the City Club of Chicago, Ellen Alberding. Ellen?
When I hear our mission described, I often think of Paul Douglas, who said that when he was young, he wanted to save the world, and then as he became older, he wanted to save the Midwest, and now he just wanted to save the Indiana Dunes in the end of his life. I'm still thinking grand thoughts. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. I know that Kelly and I had a lot of fun. We had both our daughters home, which means doors slamming and opening and closing all times of the night, and my brother was in town with his little tiny children, so they were doing little tiny children things, and then we cleverly thought we'd get a new kitten, which decided that midnight to 6 a.m. was a really good time to get to know its new family. So we've had a really lively couple of days. Thanksgiving, I love Thanksgiving. It's such a wonderful holiday. It's not just so wonderful because we can reflect on all of the things that we have to be grateful for, but also I think most people end up thinking a lot about other people who may not be quite as fortunate as we are. And just as we all have an awful lot to be thankful for, I think that many of us have people close who have been affected in some way by this recession that we're all enduring. And I know that for many people, it's a temporary setback, but for others, the loss of a job or just the breakdown of a car can be really a life-altering situation. And I always think about the children in these families and how the children are being affected, and what will it take to support them during a downtime and help them succeed in the future. We've all heard a lot about comparisons about this era with the Roosevelt era, and I think they're really apt in that this economic crisis has coincided with the arrival of fresh political leaderships. New leaders, a desire for change, and the severe recession have focused attention on what it's going to take from government, from nonprofits, and from each of us as individuals to find solutions for people. It makes it a really particularly exciting and challenging time for a foundation like ours, which is focused on policies and tough social issues. Let me start with a little background on Joyce. I know we have many good friends in the room, but there may be some of you who aren't as familiar with us as others. And as it was suggested in the introduction, most people focus first on how much money we have. And it's true, like many, we lost an awful lot of money in 2008. It was a tough year for us. But it's also true that we still have a lot of money, which is a good thing. And 2009 has been a great year for us. So we're back up to about $700 million in assets, which if it remains steady, that means we'll give away $35 to $40 million a year in the Midwest for the next several years. That's if our assets stay where they are now, which I'm hoping that they will. We're a tax-exempt organization, which means that we've got a responsibility to use that money to promote the public good. We're also a private foundation, which means that we have a huge amount of freedom in how we choose to go about doing that. And at Joyce, we've chosen to focus on policy change rather than direct charity because of our conviction that policy change can have such a huge impact on millions of people. We also use the freedom that we have to pursue some long-term concerns that we believe are and always will be critical to this region. Money is not our only asset. We do have some wonderful former board members. We also have some wonderful current board members. And I'd like to acknowledge my absolutely fantastic staff. Debbie Gillespie, our vice president, Larry Hansen, our vice president, and about 15 other people from our staff. If you want to just raise your hands. Thank you. It's a wonderful group of people, and they are what make the foundation as high quality as it is, and it makes my job a pleasure every single day that I go to work. Because we've got a great staff, because we have a supportive board, and because we're a private foundation, Joyce is able to take on tough issues, unpopular issues, and we don't have to worry about, although sometimes we do worry about tomorrow's headlines. We don't have a quarterly earnings report. We don't have to worry about election results. And because we have an essentially infinite horizon, we're a foundation that is managed so that it will exist in perpetuity, we can be very patient with our investments. We can take time to see what works and what doesn't. Our goal is to identify serious social challenges, but to focus on the ones that we think really are amenable to change. We invest in new ideas, we invest in solutions, we document results, and if we think we have a solution that's worth expanding, we can encourage major investments going forward by ourselves and by others. Right now, it's a particularly good time for new ideas because, as I mentioned, we both have this economic crisis that's driving all segments of society to look for solutions, whether it's in business, in policy, in politics, and in government. But there's also little tolerance for wasteful spending. People are really looking for solutions that are going to work. They want to invest in places that are going to have results. And finally, we have a federal administration that's actively seeking partnerships in the world of philanthropy and with people on the ground in a way that makes it seem more likely that we can have an impact, and frankly, in a way that I have not experienced in the years I've been working in philanthropy. I had an opportunity to talk with Tina Chen, who's a good friend of many people in the room, who's now in the White House recently, and I said I kind of feel like, and I think all of philanthropy feels like we're the dog that finally caught the car, and now we have to sort of figure out what to do and how to make that relationship as effective as we can. We have three priorities I want to focus on today. We do a lot of other things, but the three things that I want to talk about today are gun violence, because I feel I cannot come before this audience without raising gun violence. I'd like to talk a little bit about workforce development, and then K through 12 education. Let's start with gun violence, and some of you have heard me talk about this before. The fact is that in our city, children live with a horrific level of violence every single day. Every day, young people in Chicago and in other cities are being killed, and nearly always the weapon of choice is a gun. In the last 2 years, 500 CPS students, Chicago Public School students, have been shot. Since between January and October of this year, 196 kids in Chicago, 25 and under, were murdered with a gun. How is this possible in a city that bans handguns? How is it possible? Well, there are some reasons. Part of it is that we have state and federal laws that allow guns to flow into Chicago from nearby gun stores and through the illegal market, through secondary market sales, through theft of firearms, and through straw purchases from corrupt dealers. It makes me think about the story of Starkesia Reed, which got a huge amount of coverage and then, like many of these stories, sadly faded away. Starkesia was a 14-year-old girl sitting at home in her own living room, like many of us were sitting with our families in our living rooms. Just a few years ago, a gun came through the living room window, a bullet came through the living room window, smashed the glass, shot Starkesia, and she lay dying on her living room floor with her family. Starkesia was killed by a bullet from an AK-47. It was shot by a young man who sprayed his semi-automatic weapon up and down the street indiscriminately. This is a 14-year-old girl sitting at home. I recently learned that a video shown at the murderer's trial caught him using a fake ID at an Indiana gun shop to buy the assault weapon that killed Starkesia, which sort of leads me to ask, why is it that assault weapons like an AK-47 can be purchased in a retail shop? They're not used for hunting. These are military weapons that can shoot bullets as fast as you can squeeze your trigger finger. They should be banned. We are working in Illinois and several other states to enact such a ban, and frankly, there should be a federal ban. Another question, why is it so easy for a young gangbanger to buy such a weapon simply by flashing a fake ID? Well, it's because certain gun dealers, and it's not the majority, it's a minority of gun dealers, play loose with the rules. Federal agents are not given the resources to enforce the rules that do exist, and certain states do not establish forceful regulation of gun dealers themselves. Third question, why is it so easy for criminals, people with mental health issues, and minors to get guns? Another reason, because a huge proportion of gun sales, 40% of gun sales, require no background check. Under federal law and in most states, guns that are sold at gun shows, no background check. Private transfers, no background check. Guns that are lost and stolen, there's no requirement for them to be reported, so they flow easily into the illegal market. There are a couple of things that we would like to see happen in Springfield to help limit these sources of guns. First, we think we should insist that anyone who buys a gun must pass a background check. That doesn't seem too onerous to me. We should increase the regulation and oversight of licensed gun dealers so that rogue dealers know that there's going to be some penalties if they misbehave. We should ask our elected officials why military-style assault weapons and ammunition are legally available to citizens. None of these proposed measures would burden lawful gun owners. They would just make it harder for illegal users to get guns. And finally, to help keep kids safe from gun violence, we've got to work to identify and expand the best school and community-based programs that at-risk youth, so to give at-risk youth a chance to survive and thrive. It's an enormously complicated issue that's going to require all of us to work together to find solutions. And we know that many, many people want to help solve the problem. Many funders in Chicago have indicated an interest, and I wish I had a simple solution to offer. One of my colleagues even said to me, Ellen, if you knew the answer to this, I'd give you all of my money. And that is the way I think most people feel about it. They would do anything to find the solution. But I think we all have to think in new creative ways and work together to find solutions. We know that Ron Huberman, CPS Chief Ron Huberman, has a really interesting new program where he has identified the children in Chicago public schools that are most likely to either shoot someone or be shot by someone, and he's working intensively with them. The University of Chicago Crime Lab has a really interesting new intervention that involves counseling and after-school activities. What we're really interested in there is that it is very inexpensive, very easy to replicate, and will have a very, very good evaluation, so we may learn if this is a good intervention or not. And there are other efforts as well. And Mayor Daley obviously has been a leader on this. But local officials can't do this by themselves. We've done the polling in Illinois, so we know that the vast majority of Illinoisans support common sense gun laws. We'd like to see something happen in Springfield on this. Freedom from violence should be the bottom line, but kids also need a stable home life in order to succeed. Today, with more than 1 in 10 Americans out of work, unemployment is rocking families to the core. One or both parents have lost their jobs, and children suffer as a result. We all intuitively know what studies have demonstrated, that children in these households have high anxiety and stress, and their academic performance suffers. The truth of the matter is that many of the parents who held jobs at one time that were stable, long-term jobs don't have the basic qualifications to compete for jobs in the new economy. And that's the second issue I wanted to talk a little bit about. Here's kind of an alarming story, but I think it's very typical. Last year, the city of Chicago worked with about 2,000 laid off workers to help them prepare for jobs, and as part of that, they did a screening about what their skills were, and they found that a huge proportion of these adult workers could not read or do math at a 9th grade level. So the situation that these folks are in, and they're about 30 to 60 years old, is that they have to go back to school essentially to learn how to read and write and do arithmetic, and at the same time reorient themselves and get retrained for new positions. It's a really tough thing to ask people to do, but it's not a hopeless situation if they're properly prepared. Even though the job situation is bleak right now, it's going to turn around, and when it does, the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the White House Council on Economic Advisors project that most of the jobs that will be in the fastest growing segments are going to require a year or two of post-secondary education or training, which suggests that now is the time to really invest in community colleges and remedial education. You've probably read lots of stories about community colleges, the huge demand that they're experiencing. They're running classes at midnight in order to accommodate the number of people that want to attend. But it's a huge challenge for these adult workers to re-enter a school system they probably weren't that comfortable in to begin with, sitting down next to 18-year-olds, trying to relearn things that they should have learned a long time ago or been taught a long time ago, and at the same time develop skills for a new job. That's the area that the Joyce Foundation has focused on for the last couple of years. And the good news is that the Recovery Act, the stimulus money as it's commonly called, included $4 billion in education and training funds, and states want to know how to spend this money effectively. In fact, the Midwest states are leaders in this arena, with many innovative programs already happening, and I'd like to credit Whitney Smith from our staff and other folks in the room who've worked on these issues. And you know, there's always a little bit of serendipity when you can claim some success, and I don't know if it's serendipity, but Joyce has been working on this for about 4 or 5 years. We've invested in new programs. There's a track record of success, and then all of a sudden there's huge demand from the states and from the federal government for programs that work, and we're able to offer them up, which is a really nice position to be in. The programs that we are working on and have supported are designed so that the remedial education is integrated with the technical and career programs, and the students are mastering the basics and preparing to advance in new jobs. And the best of these programs use kind of real-world examples, creative teaching methods that get away from traditional teacher with a chalkboard kind of atmosphere. And of course, what our ultimate goal is to get the state and federal funds into these innovative programs so that they can expand. The final topic I'd like to talk about is K through 12 education. And here we also have something of a call to action. Every child deserves a great education. We've all heard that before. It's really not a good thing for our country if that doesn't happen. Unfortunately, lots and lots of kids are not getting a great education, and a disproportionate number of them are African American and Latino. It's unbelievably difficult to get dropout statistics, accurate dropout statistics, but I've got a couple of figures to share with you. One study that was done just a couple of years ago, 63% of black male Chicago public school students did not graduate from high school. So that means out of 100 kids that start their freshman year, 37 graduated. Here's another study that was done down at University of Chicago. Only 4 of 100 high schoolers at CPS went on to complete 4 years of college. This is not a good situation. It's unfair to students, it's bad for society, and it's something that Mayor Daley, Ron Huberman, and Secretary of Education Arne Duncan are working incredibly hard to change. But how do you turn the tide? Joyce has focused on teachers. Research supported by Joyce over the last 5 years shows that the single most critical factor in a child's success is the quality of their teacher. Yet our most needy children, mostly poor and minority children, systematically receive the least able teachers. And they're more likely to have teachers with the least experience, lowest ACT scores, and lowest GPAs. We assign our most vulnerable students to the least experienced and least qualified teachers, and then we wonder why the system is failing. It makes sense that better teachers can make a difference, and statistics bear this out. Students who have 3 great teachers in a row are in the top quartile nationally. Students with 3 bad teachers in a row drop to the bottom quartile nationally. And there's lots of evidence about the impact of great teaching and, conversely, the impact of bad teaching on student performance. That's why Joyce is focused almost entirely on improving the quality of teachers and principals in the Midwest. Today, there's reason to hope for much needed changes, however. President Obama is directing $4.3 billion to states that lead the way on education reform in the so-called Race to the Top program. We view this as just an incredibly impressive initiative of the Obama administration, and we think it's going to push significant reforms. Arne Duncan has said that states will not receive money from Race to the Top unless they push through real change. Illinois is a contender, but it's at risk of not getting this money. We took some steps in the right direction earlier this year by raising the cap on charter schools and investing in better data systems to track student achievement. But we really need a dose of political courage and political will to push through the next series of steps that have to happen. They're prerequisite for us getting money from the federal government on this. What we need to do is evaluate teachers based upon how well and how much their students actually learn, and use those evaluations to make decisions on which teachers stay, which go, and how teachers are compensated. That is a tough thing to do, but it's something we need to do. If Illinois qualifies for Race to the Top, it could be in line for $300 to $400 million for education reform. That's not chicken feed, it's serious money. But to get it, we have to have some serious reform. Illinois is unlikely to make the first cut unless we connect teacher evaluations to the performance of their students. The good news is, as the Chicago Tribune wrote a few weeks ago, most education groups, including union officials, policymakers at the state board, and lawmakers, agree on the fundamental changes we need to make. The challenge now is whether these groups can agree to the specifics in the next month, and whether the legislature and governor's office can pass legislation in early January to give Illinois the best possible chance to win. I encourage you to watch this story. It won't get a whole lot of press for the next couple of weeks, but we hope that it will in January. But keep an eye on it. What our state leaders do on this issue, or don't do, will have a huge impact on whether we can say that our state is indeed on a race to the top, or whether we are committed to a slow decline in our education system. So just a few words in closing. As a society, we must have policies that help provide children, regardless of their color or their economic background, with what they need to succeed. They need an education that prepares them to be productive and engaged citizens. They need a stable home with parents who themselves are well-trained and productive workers. And they need a neighborhood that's a safe haven, not a war zone. A good education and a stable home life are imperative, but they do nothing for kids whose lives are in peril as they're traveling to and from school. The Joyce Foundation is incredibly proud to support the many groups that are working hard to change the situation. We applaud those of you here in this room who are our partners and welcome everyone's participation in making change together. Thank you so much, and thanks for having me. And now I think I have a few questions here.
Thank you very much, Ellen. That was absolutely great. Here. We've got, please send questions up. We'd love to get them. This one is from Michael Bauer. Okay? Now, this is a long question, Michael. You said you would work on that. Now, let's get, I've got to put my glasses on. All right, here we go. Does the political will exist in this country today to effectively restrict the ownership, sale, and purchase of firearms that would significantly reduce gun violence? And if not, if that's not the case, what needs to be done to create that level of political will? Terrific, thank you.
I think it's a very, very tough slog at the federal level, and that's why we are focusing at the state level, Michael, and I assume that you would basically agree with that. One of the things, I'll say again what I said in my talk, we know through polling that the vast majority of Illinoisans are supportive of common sense gun laws. We also, though, know that even though 70 and 80% and higher will support each of those items that I laid out and others, we also know that it's not really in a measure of salience. It's not often on the people's top 10 list. And so what needs to be done is to identify the people for whom it is in their top 10 and also try to move other people into thinking about it as one of their top issues and get them to act. And what we're very, very interested in is whether we could use social media, micro-targeting, and other strategies to organize people around this issue in Illinois and in a couple of other states, and we are now investigating that very strategy.
Terrific, thank you. Now we have a question from Tom Lindsay of Shimer College. What is the current cap on charter schools in Illinois, and why is there a cap at all?
Robin, what's the current cap? Do you know? 100, okay. And why is there a cap at all? Well, because it's there are people who believe there shouldn't be charter schools at all. That's why there's a cap. And we went from 30 to 100? Yeah. Fortunately, I have friends in the audience who can answer questions.
It's a group activity. Joyce Saxon from the Board of Governors asks, isn't it true that the teacher unions protect ineffective teachers? You get to answer. See, I just have to ask.
I think that there is a lot of interest among union leaders nationally. There are a lot of progressive union leaders who believe that there should be changes in the way that teachers are dealt with, that teachers ought to be compensated for doing a great job, and that there ought to be measures linked to student performance that are connected to their compensation. And we are working very hard to work with progressive union leaders, both here in Illinois and elsewhere, to support the changes that Arne Duncan is promoting from the federal level. But he can't do everything top down. There needs to be bottom up support for the reforms that he's promoting, and that's something that we're doing a lot to. We're investing in that sort of bottom up support for his reforms.
Miriam Shabo of the Office of Catholic Schools at the Archdiocese of Chicago asks, would you comment on the possibility of pre-K through 16 partnerships between schools, government agencies related to economic development, the private sector, and the philanthropic community?
Well, that's kind of a big question, but on the early childhood front, I think an area that Illinois could make some huge progress in is connecting the preschool environment, whether it's within the public system or whether they're privately run preschools, and coming up with some standards so that kids coming out of preschool are actually prepared to enter kindergarten ready to learn. So that's a really interesting area where there's a lot of philanthropic interest, and it connects both the business community, the private sector, and the public K through 12 sector. I think there are probably 20 other ways that we are all really interested in working together. It's such a high priority for many people, both in my world and in the corporate world. So that's my comment. It's been a high priority and will continue to be a priority going forward.
Really delighted to say we've got a question here from Diana Nelson. Diana, how about a wave? Where's Diana? There you are. Hey, so let's all give Diana a round of applause. Longtime member of the General Assembly, former executive director of public affairs over at the Union League Club. Great to have you here today. Diana says, and by the way, we've got a couple of more questions. Are they coming up? Have we got them? We're just sending them down here. We're sending them down. We're going to get those down here. All right. Diana asks, what are the most frustrating aspects of the limitations of foundation power and influence?
Well, since our power and influence is essentially infinite, I don't even know. The restrictions, there are restrictions on what foundations can do, and they primarily revolve around lobbying and electioneering. So there are restrictions on our activities, and we try to be very aware of those, but we have many partners in the world that can do those things, so when we can't, we'll find partners who can.
Okay, we've got another question on education, then I think we're going to wrap up with one about the political process from Peter Benzinger. This is from Adrian Archia. What is the Joyce Foundation's view on the need for fundamental change in funding public education in Illinois?
That's Adrian, where are you? Hi. That is a huge issue. It's one that lots and lots of folks have worked really hard on, and there's no question that at some point the inequities in spending, per pupil spending, have got to be addressed. We view it as an issue of very high importance. But in my remarks, I noted that we try to sort things. There are lots of things that are really important, and then there's a subset of those that we think we can actually make a difference on, and that's not one that we have seen a pathway for us to participate in recently. But I would hope that in the future that's something that we could take on.
I also want to acknowledge Paul Green. I think our City Club treasurer, Paul Green, has entered the room. Paul, is that true? There you are. Hey, Paul. Kind of interloping up here. He's going to give me a grade for my performance, I can tell you. Peter Benzinger from the Change Illinois Coalition for Government Reform says Illinois government and the legislature have many problems stemming from the way legislative districts are drawn. They serve the incumbents because they pick their voters. How can Illinois have a fair and equitable system to set legislative boundaries?
Thank you, Peter. Redistricting is going to be a huge issue,